3-day national conference. And we have the midst Dr. Sunil Patnaik, Director, Odisha Institute of Maritime and Southeast Asian Studies. I welcome Elora, Dr. M.J. Sindhu, and Dr. Anam Behera, Professor Venudhar Patra, Dr. Balram Tripathi, who will be in today's this last leg of the 3-day conference. Without much ado, I welcome Dr. Sunil Patnaik to be again and request him to preside over the meeting. We'll start with online presentations. We'll first finish up Elora's presentation and then followed by Dr. M.J. Sindhu's presentation. Then we'll have the PowerPoint presentation here. And that you can watch the program of people who are physically present here.
Very good morning. It is really a great opportunity for all of us. Odisha University has taken the leadership, and we are happy that they have organized a special session on recent advances in archaeology of Odisha, because it was a much felt, much needed thing that has to be organized. And we are very much thankful and grateful to the university authorities, and especially to Dr. Umakant Mishra. Really, it is a fact that within last 2 decades, number of archaeological, excavations, explorations, documentation has taken up by different organizations. So that actually need to have a compendium for the researchers, for the budding researchers, and it is a good opportunity, of course. I welcome in this context. I am also given an opportunity to chair a session. Again, I am thankful. In this session, there are 6 papers. Dr. Balram Tripathi, Elora Trivedi, Venudhar Patra, Anam Behera, Prasan Dikit, Susan Patra, and Dr. Sidhu. I welcome you all to this session, and I am happy that Elora is already online. Elora, how are you?
Sir, very good to see you after 7 years, 8 years, I guess.
You are most welcome. And then we will go for the session. I request Dr. Elora to present her paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. A very good morning to all of you. Before I begin my presentation, let me try to share my screen, and I hope yes. So I would also request how much time do I have to know. I guess 15 minutes to 17 minutes.
It's 15 minutes.
Okay, sir. Okay, I'll try to finish as early as possible. Just an introduction. Yes, sir.
You share your screen now?
Is it visible now, sir?
No.
Is it visible now?
No.
Okay. I'll try to do it again.
Try again. Well, bound for the live stream. Yes.
Okay. So, sir, to introduce that, I am Dr. Elora Trivedi. I am a faculty assistant professor at the School of Historical Studies in Nalanda University. Sir, I think, is it echoing or something? I hope it's okay.
It's okay.
So, before I begin, I would like to just mention that I have been working on the cult of Tara in eastern part of India as my PhD dissertation from 2012. So it's almost 14 years now that I've been working on this topic, and all my paper that I'm going to present today is part of my doctoral research, which is going to be published soon. So some of the field research that I have are almost like 8 years to 6 years data. And I'm sorry that I have not been able to visit Odisha in a recent time, but I hope to do so. I'm very happy to meet all of you. So today, I'm not going to focus on any art or iconographic aspect. Those are though very important to understand a cult. Today, because the theme of the conference, I would be only talking about some of the archaeological issues and prospects and problems that we face when we try to understand a religious dimension through archaeological study. So first to come to Odisha, which is very dear and close to my heart, because what I can see is... Please try again. Sorry for that. Yeah. So what I can see is very unique geography and geomorphology of Odisha. So we can see that even from the... I'm sorry. Even from very early time, Neolithic, Chalcolithic to the early historic, as well as early medieval time, the land and the human relationship has been crucial for that. So what I mean to say that from a very early time, we see the interactions between human and land has made different visible as well as archaeological and historical records. So the interplay between the hilly regions as well as the number of rivers and river bodies or water bodies have been very crucial for the history and archaeology of Odisha. So sometimes in the fieldwork, we'll see that there is a very interesting range of hills, and the next moment we can see there are small water bodies and very interesting settlements connected to the Sereni Valley. You can see the river course as well as the deposit of the alluvial this thing, and not only the alluvial deposit but other also different kind of sculptural and archaeological remains deposit are often renovated and reconfigured in form of temples as well as sculptures. So what I mean to say, when somebody approach the landscape of Odisha, they always have to understand even a cult or Buddhism, the geography and geology as well as geomorphology is very crucial for us to understand first. I'd also like to give a very small introduction to the cultic personality of Tara. I would rather use less and less of the term cult, because we often are very confused and often very general about using the term cult. So what we can see from the inception, all the deity of Tara was somehow connected as a kind of a female deity, as attending to Avalokiteshvara, who is again a spiritual son or bodhisattva in the whole pantheon of Mahayana deities. So we see that in kind of a regional a kind of approach in Odisha, the female deities were also introduced not only in a kind of a chronological order along with Avalokiteshvara and then Tara, but also we see that when the cult of Avalokiteshvara, for example, this very interesting image of Lokeshwara, Potalaka Lokeshwara, what we can see is often considered, as Uma sir also have wrote about it, as a sculptural mandala. So we see that in a kind of also a kind of a hierarchy as well as a thematic kind of depiction already are present. But of course we see that there are very interesting aspects of this deity where she often considered as she often came to take a very important place in the whole Buddhist history of Odisha. And we can say there are enough evidence to say that there was a cultic veneration as well as a very strong ritual environment involving this deity, as we can understand. Now, that this case is not only particular to Tara. So particularly when we look into the diamond triangle Buddhist sites of Odisha, we see that there are very important other female deities, particularly Chunda or Vrukiti, who were also given very much monastic, at least, attention for their cultic veneration as well as sculptural representation. So we see a lot of resources as well as energy, of course, and attention was given to the representation and to some of the very unique iconographic representation of different female deities of Mahayana as well as esoteric deities in Buddhism. So what I mean to say is, when we try to look into not history but in archaeology of religion, whether it is Tara or whether it is a particular cult, we have to actually follow certain format of different scholars who have given us that there can be certain indication of rituals. So maybe we cannot directly approach religion, but we at least can try to find some of the indicators archaeologically for rituals. But today I will be only focusing about the landscape. So a number of important work has been already done in case of Buddhist history as well as sculptures, Buddhist sculptures or images from Odisha, and all of us must be knowing about the work of Donaldson, who has given us enough data, as well as, of course, we should not forget about Mahapatra's work, where there are enormous detailing of data about sites and all. So the problem, of course, with all due respect, the problem that we can face, particularly I face in the course of my research to understand what was the most important, like the importance about the cult, was to understand the context of these sculptures. It's not only important that we are talking about there are a lot of sculptures of Tara or a lot of sculptures of Vrikiti or Avalokiteshwar, but often we, because of our focus on the sculpture and particularly the visual as well as ritual importance of the sculpture, often we forget to give the same amount of importance to the archaeological context, which results into multiple problems as well as loss of context. And once the archaeological context is lost, half of the ritual importance of that sculpture also become lost. What I mean to say that images, of course, are not only visual ritual objects, but also very important archaeological clues of indicators of archaeology of religion. So as we know, in early medieval period, the whole of Odisha was divided into different kind of sub-regions, such as the Utkala or the Toshali, Uttara Toshali, Dakkhina Toshali, Kijinga Mandala, Kijinga Kota, Southern Kosala, Kongada, Kalinga Nagara. So looking into sculptures, trying to understand the sculptures from all of this, I tried to make a kind of index of the sculptures as well as their context. And I found out that there are over 60 sculptures, and majorly these sculptures have lost their context. So today I'll try to look back into the landscape issues which are very crucial to understand this cult of Tara. For example, the problem happens because of maps like this, which is a kind of a very a kind of aggregation, a kind of a very generalization of sites on the landscape. So we just see that there are because of maps like this, we often think of cluster, and I would rather walk away from such as identifying clusters more and more, because of the very unique geography and the land and human interactions in Odisha, particularly in the early medieval time period. So we see that there were much more important land strategies that humans follows, not only in case of settlement, but also in case of making religious sites. So if we see in this map, we'll see that there are a bunch of Buddhist sites clubbed together, Jajpur, Udayagiri, Ratnagiri, Lalitgiri, right? But when we look into the Google map, it makes very clear identifications of how crucial was this interplay between river as well as the small hillocks that we see, and a kind of what we call as the river flood zone or alluvial zone. So often the sites are located in a bit of the elevated land that we can see in between of the two flood zones. So often we see that Ratnagiri, of course, is there, but Udayagiri, Lalitgiri, and Langudi, they try to find out this very little bit of elevation over the land where we can see that can be safe. So engaging resources for a Buddhist, making a Buddhist monastery is, of course, very crucially, it was undertaking the geological interpretation. So the site of Ratnagiri, as you can see in this map, it becomes very clear how the site is patterned. But when we look into this, we can see that how the river is very close from the site itself. So Ratnagiri, of course, has given us some of the very interesting and preserved images of Tara. For example, the ASI Side Museum has some of them, where we often should not miss into the ritual environment, which are preserved also not only in the iconography, but also particularly this image of monk here. And also particularly this very interesting image where we see the
Excuse
worship
me,
of
Elora.
yeah.
I'm not able to see the slide. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
Now it's
oh,
visible.
is it visible now?
Yeah, now it's visible.
Earlier it
Earlier
was
it was
not
not.
visible?
It was
Oh,
not transitioning.
okay, okay. Um, Uma
Thank
sir,
you.
is it visible now?
Visible.
Okay, okay. So what I was trying to say is, for example, this is the landscape when we look into the different kind of sites. Now I am coming to Ratnagiri, for example. We can see that there are different sculptures which are also which have also contained some of the important ritual demarcations of sculptures and iconography. And of course, we all are familiar with this. A kind of familiar with this kind of the Ashtamava iconography of Tara, where we can see that Tara is the savioress. There is too much discussion on this. I'm not going to go in earlier. This is later, and we all know that there is very position in the iconography for regional varieties that we get in Magad, or particularly in different parts of Bihar. So we see that there is much more affinity not with the particular sadhana, but a direct kind of tradition from the visual presentations in the. So which is very much interesting, though the sadhana is available. We can see that this relation with the Western Deccan and Odisha is much more connectable than the Western Deccan and Bihar. So now Ratnagiri, another very crucial image is in Brooklyn Museum, which is considered as green Tara and condylite, which of course was confused earlier to be considered from Udayagiri, from Ratnagiri, because of this kind of affinity with other kind of Bodhisattva images, that people thought that this is of course from Ratnagiri. So this is what happens when the archaeological context are lost for the sculptures in process of acquisition, which has happened over the last 100 to 200 years. So, but when I try to look more closely into the iconography, as well as what are the clues in this, we of course see that Odisha, of course, has a very unique stylistic. I'm not going there, but I'm just touching on this, that this chuda is very, very particular for Odisha. Now, when we look into not Ratnagiri, but in Udayagiri, we see that there is possible connection with images such as Brikiti. Now, even for Ratnagiri, we have close similarity, but when we just compare the lower part, we can clearly see that in the depiction of Ekajata, there is clear resemblance for both Tara and Brigiti in this case. So people have understood that, people have thought that this is from P.K. Trivedi's the excavation report, that this is the triple shrine, and possibly the Brigiti image is from here. But to have a closer look, we can understand these are actually not for small image shrines. These are much more possibly for a kind of a small stupas, and there are triple entries to this. So the Brigiti image was of course not originally here, though in course of archaeological excavation it was found here. So what we can see or possibly say that maybe they form a kind of a Tara and Brigiti attending figure for a shrine of Avalokiteshwara. So in situ, some of the scholars have considered this as in situ, but it is not actually. Another interesting aspect about is this image is located from Ratnagiri, but it's very interesting, and this is of course one of the very few images that we have from all of Odisha to consider. Now, looking away from sculptures, I would also like to say that there are particular other indicators which involved in the cultic images of Tara. This is an old ASI photographs. You can understand how the stupas were found, and these are the neatly organized. Now, Uma sir has also done a study, and of course, previous scholars have done a study, and Uma sir has also quoted that we can see that the number of images of Tara in the monolithic stupas are of course higher even than Buddha, which of course mean something very interesting. But we are of course moving away from the term votive in case of votive stupas, because when we just say votive, it feels like some non-monastic people came and made these stupas. That has been the general idea about the monolithic stupas right now. But more and more studies are showing that these were possibly part of the mortuary rituals, and we should not only connect the non-monastic people, but possibly with monastic population also. There are points of debate in that. There are other ceilings which are of course mention Tara's name and Tara's refuge from Ratnagiri, but of course then again becomes a point where this part of the monastic or the non-monastic offerings, but we can at least just try to look into the materiality of this, the ritualistic aspect of this kind of records. I mean to say that we should not be only focusing on sculptures, but we should be looking also in miniature images, particularly small images of portable images of Tara. This is very tiny in the ASI museum. This is of course Patnaik sir is here, Patnaik sir, and when we were exploring, we found this in with a private collector. And
5 minutes more. Hey,
sorry,
5 minutes more, please.
5
Okay.
minutes.
Okay, sir. I'll wrap up. So also we can see that, so coming from all this, we can see that there are multiple images and multiple locations possibly of different types which can be used. For example, they are not only making sites on the plain, but also they use this kind of hillocks. Particularly, the best example would be Langudi, where the monastery was pre-existing and particular ritual space were made for Tara and Buddha, as we can see the later intrusions in the images of Tara and Buddha here. Now, moving to the Baitarini Valley, it becomes much more complex because there are less hills or hillocks in this region. And what we can see is there are much more problem with getting a stable kind of land because of the diverse courses of the river bodies. But of course, we know about Solampur, and I think one of the earliest images of Tara, datable of course to 8th and or 9th century, is found in a present-day temple at Raghunathpur, which we all know. There are references from a inscription from Ratnagiri that was possibly a queen patronized or queen lived in one of the monasteries. So the Solampur site is not excavated, but we can see there are possibilities of structural remains here, and there are some areas which has exposed section. So, but when we look into Tara, which is most quoted from Solampur, we miss this kind of very crucial images. This is Ashtamaha Pratihari image, and as along with Ashta Bodhisattvas, which is very unique. So what we are seeing that there are rivers, and you can see river here, and this is a present panel. And when we look, the sites are actually the sculptures are located in temples like this. So it is very difficult for us to actually locate the original context, but these are often preserved. Many images Buddhist nature are preserved in the local temples, which often are inscribed, as you can see in this case. So I'll just give you another example of this Padmeshwar or the Baneshwar Nasi, where we can see that Baneshwar Nasi is in Mahanadi. We can see that it also became a very crucial point. So you can see that this is the present later temple which enshrines some of the Buddhist images. So the site possibly is now lost, the originally Buddhist site, but luckily some of the images are preserved. For example, such as these, but the most crucial would be, of course, the Tara image from Baneshwar Nasi, which is earlier was in Buddha Bihar Museum, now it is lost. And this Baneshwar Nasi, of course, coming to a late 11th, 12th century, inspired multiple images. For example, this image of from Bhubaneswar and Puri district of Tara and of Pragya Paramita, which are this thing. So Chaudhar also becomes a very crucial point. I think the closest location from Ravinshaw, you can see that there are multiple locations in this area which have Buddhist very important images and sculptures, particularly of Tara. You can see this is from private households. We can see that this is one of the best preserved example of how this late 10 or 11th century to this shrine-like feature started. And two other images from Chaudhar are, of course, has been transported outside India, and they are also preserved of Pragya Paramita and Avalokiteshwar. Now, Ajodhya was being discussed yesterday. I'd like to say again, we have to take into consideration the Sono River and why possibly this particular settlement, not just a Buddhist monastery or a Jain monastery, but possibly there was an early medieval settlement here, as you can see, with these very crucial features of the rectangular tanks which were excavated along this thing. So it has also given us some of the very important iconographic representation of Tara, at least this Vajratara image and Marichi image. In my course of exploration, I found there are possibilities of a kind of encircling rampart around, so early medieval possibility of a settlement rather than just a vihara. And now finally coming to the Kongada Mandala, I would say that again this hill, the Ghantasila hill, was very crucial. In case of like Ajodhya, we can see the Nilgiri, and in case of Kongada Mandala, the Achyutrajpur side, you can see that again they were keeping in a connection with the hill, where we can see that some of the very important site images are in connection with the site. But the best example which has been connected with, of course, the Banpur copper plate, as well as a fragment of the Ashtashastrika Pragyaparamita Sutra manuscript, where we can say that the Kongada Mandala Khadiravani Tara, this label is coming, or in the inscription it is coming as Khadiravani Bhattarika, which is very likely the Tara image. So possibly this image was well known around the 11th century. Achyut Rajput is also very crucial for the bronze images and some of the very unique iconography which have never been seen from any other parts of Bihar as well. Preserved, for example, this Kurakulla Tara, which is very unique. Also, images from Achyut Rajput are now transported possibility of this site, but the context is again lost. So we need to be very careful about, for example, this Lakma, this metal image is possibly from Achyut Rajput, as you can see with the similarity with some of the pedestal. So here I just want to end. There are multiple aspects of the provenance lost, and one of the most important, again, I was just talking about this, that this image has been lost, and of the possibly Vajramahakala or Vairava that Sir has to study. And we have to be more careful about provenance and understanding side, not just the art and iconography, to have a kind of archaeology of Buddhism. Thank you all. Particularly thanks to Mohanty sir, who has been my supervisor for PhD. Also Umakant sir, who has been always helping me when I was starting my PhD, as well as throughout the course, inspiring me to be in this field. Also, Patnaik sir has also helped me during field work and has been a source of inspiration, particularly ICHR, who has helped my study as well as the present conference. Thank you for letting me speak for a little bit longer than I thought, but there are important issues that needs to be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elora. It is really very interesting and very elaborated discussion. Uh, I will comment at the end, but really it is a very well surveyed and well studied paper. Thanks
Thank
once
you.
again.
Thank you, sir.
Now I request Dr. Sidhu to present her paper.
Good morning, sir. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, to all the delegates and all the students present there. First, I would like to share my screen. It's, is it visible, sir?
No, no,
No? Just a minute.
yes, visible now. Please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm not able to change my slide. I'm just trying on that. Is it visible now, sir?
Yes, yes.
I'll just go with this. I think I'm not able to. Good morning, everyone. My presentation is on the mythological stories or the various mythologies associated with Maheshwara subjugation in Buddhism. And we see that there are a lot of stories in various tantras, and these are different from each other based on the deity which is important to that tantra. And along with that, we'll also see whether we find any iconographical examples for these representations from Odisha. Is the slide changing, sir?
No. It's not changing.
Just a minute. I'll try once again. I have to do it from there. Is the screen changing now, sir? Hello? Can you hear me?
Not changing. You could also, can you send the
PPT there.
PPT there? Or maybe you can also come in little later so that you fix up the problem. What do you say?
Dr. Sindhu, if I can
Yeah.
just say that sometimes there is problem with sharing the screen. So when you open it, open with the Google Meet, and they say that share the window and share the screen.
Yeah.
So try to share the particular
Window.
window.
Yeah, that's what I did. But then I'm not able to change the slides from there.
Convert it to the PDF, and then possibly maybe you can just click. Sometimes problems also with the file.
Okay.
CA question.
F5 दबाओ तो कीबोर्ड में
Uh,
F5 दबाने ऐसे full screen
she's not able to change the slide.
Is it visible now?
It's visible now. Yes, it's working now. Perfect.
Okay, then I'll go from here. I'm not able to see myself, but I think, yeah, please let me know whether the slides are changing now. Are you able to see the transition?
No.
No?
You could. Changing. No,
Is it changing?
Yes.
Okay. So sorry for this trouble, and I'll start with the presentation right again. Now, this topic, it's on Maheshwara subjugation in Buddhism, and to show how the Hindu deity Maheshwara was subjugated in Buddhism as a Mara, or as a form of obstacle, and how his status changed from time to time, and to see whether there is any iconographic examples that we get from Odisha. Now, when we look at the Indian Buddhism, we can see that it always existed in a multi-religious landscape. So as a result of this, it always had to interact with the deities of the other religion. And this interaction, we can see that like how yakshas, yakshinis, and other devas were incorporated in the early Buddhist art of like how we can see in different places like Sanchi, Barut, etc. And we also have the story of Buddha from Tushita heaven. And here he is shown as accompanied by the Hindu gods Indra and Brahma. But in all these cases, we can see that the deities who are represented are not in a humiliating manner. They are seen attending the Buddha, but they do it on their own will. They are not humiliated or subjugated in any manner. But later on, with the advent of Vajrayana, we can see that some different deities or ferocious deities were introduced into Buddhism, and these deities were shown as humiliating the or prominent Hindu deities. For example, a deity called Aparajita was introduced in Buddhism, who was shown as trampling the Hindu god Ganesha. And here, the Hindu god Ganesha, as we know, he is a Vignantaka, but for Buddhist, he is described as a Vigna or an obstacle that has to be eliminated. Again, it went. Are you able to see now? Excuse me?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Okay. So, this, the showing Ganesha as a Vigna, we can see in different stages. So, for example, this is the sculpture from Ellora. And here we can see that the deity Aparajita is seated over a prostrate figure. But this is just a human figure. It doesn't have any other attributes. So, it's a personification of Vigna. But when we come to this sculpture from Lalitgiri of 7th century, we can see that the Vignas, one of the Vigna has taken up the form of an elephant-headed being. And still later, when we come to this 8th century or later period sculpture from Bihar, we can see that the Vigna has already taken the form of Ganesha. So by this time, Ganesha is identified as a Vigna which has to be eliminated so that being can attain enlightenment. Now, Ganesha was not the only, Aparajita was not the only god who was shown as trampling Ganesha. We have another deity named Achala who was also shown as trampling over Ganesha. And when we look at the descriptions of Achala in various texts, it's mentioned that his ritual is effective in averting all obstacles that leads to enlightenment. So it's clear that Ganesha is seen as one of the obstacles to enlightenment. And these are examples from Tibet belonging to a later period, 11th, 12th century. So in this painting, that an interesting thing we can see is that along with Ganesha, a new figure is added as obstacle here. And here it's none other than the Maheshwara or Shiva of Hinduism. So from this, we can understand that Shiva was also considered as one of the obstacles to enlightenment. Now, talking about Achala, we find that, Achala is effective in eliminating the obstacles. And he's first mentioned in a sutra called Vairocana Abhisambodhi Sutra. And in this sutra, it's mentioned that Achala is positioned below Vairocana and his duty is to ward off any type of obstacles in the practice. And when we look at this image from Ratnagiri, it's from temple number 4, we find that this particular image of Vairocana or Abhisambodhi Vairocana, and there is a small image at the bottom of the sculpture. It's placed at the, below Vairocana. And this deity is none other than Achala. And as Ellora said, in this sculpture, the context is very important because this particular sculpture has been identified as Manjushri by many scholars. But when we look at the sculpture, the context of the sculpture, we can see that this is none other than the Abhisambodhi Vairocana who is in deep meditation. And this is Achala, and his description correctly matches the one that is given in Vairocana Abhisambodhi Sutra, that he's standing in this pose with a pasha in his hand and a sword in the other hand to ward off the obstacles that may affect the practitioner during this practice. And Achala, apart from this, as an attendant figure to Vairocana, we find Achala also as an independent deity in one of the votive stupas belonging to 10th, 11th centuries. So this shows that from the attendant deity, he has the status of the deity has increased, or it has gone up to that of an independent deity. And description of this form of Achala we find in Sadhanamala, where he is described as carrying a pasha to bind the enemies of humanity. And here the enemies are none other than the Hindu gods, Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. And they are get terrified by the Tarjini Mudra that he displays on his hand. And along with that, it is also mentioned that he attacks the host of Mara with the sword in one of his hands. And after the defeat, he gives them back their lives, and then he resuscitates them as Buddhist gods so that they can perform pious duties to human beings in the future. So again, here we can see that he attacks the Maras and destroys them. So, and we can see that Shiva is one of the Mara who he destroys. So again, a description that Shiva is identified as one of the Maras in Buddhism. And to support this view, this is a sculpture from Jagdishpur in Bihar. And here you can see the enlightenment scene. It's Ashtamaha Pratihara stele. And it has a beautiful representation of the Mara's attack. And here you can see that along with in Mara's army, one of the person who is accompanying Mara is Shiva seated on his bull. And here they are shown as fleeing away from the scene after getting defeated by Buddha Shakyamuni. So in this scene also you can see that Shiva is depicted as one of the Maras. In later Buddhism, from one Mara, the philosophical concept of Mara changed, and 4 types of Mara have been identified. One is Kanda Mara, then Klesha Mara, Mrityu Mara, and Devaputra Mara. And these Maras were identified as the Hindu gods Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Indra. So in this also we see that Shiva is shown as one of the Maras. So in all these examples, we see that Shiva is one of the Maras, but the person who attacks and converts him is different in different cases. For example, in this stele, it's the historical Buddha Shakyamuni who is converting him. Here it's Achala, who is the wisdom protector deity, and here it's Hevajra, who is the emanation of Dhyani Buddha. And in different cases, the person who is converting is different. So all these are narrated in various myths in different tantras, and each tantra follows a different version, but it has a common story and a common pattern. And these these stories were introduced in Buddhist tantric teachings so that they can justify their compassionate violence and the need for this Buddhas to emanate and conquer a forceful deity and to bring it under control. So the main story is that in every tantra, you see that the main story is Maheshwara and his retinue is creating havoc in the world. They are roaming around and they are causing suffering to humanity. And so the Buddha takes up different ferocious forms, attacks Maheshwara, subdues him, and then after that he resuscitates him in the form of a Buddhist deity and gives him a name of Bhasmeshwara Nirghosha and accommodates him into one of his as one of the Buddhist deities into the mandala. So this story is different in different tantras. In the beginning, we see the sutra called Karandavyuha Sutra, where the Avalokiteshvara's virtues are described. And it's like to extol the virtues of Avalokiteshvara, that all the gods in the universe were born from him. Even Shiva was one of those gods. And after some time, Shiva asks Avalokiteshvara about his destiny, and then he gets assured from Avalokiteshvara that in the future he'll be born as a Tathagata with the name of Bhasmeshwara Nirghosha. And it's interesting to note that even when the later tantras incorporated Maheshwara into the Buddhist fold, they have given him the same name that is mentioned in Karandavyuha, that is Bhasmeshwara Nirghosha. Now we'll look at various tantras which have these stories. One of this is Sarva Tathagata Tattva Sangraha, and it's one of the oldest version of this Maheshwara subjugation myth. And it belongs to the Yoga Tantra tradition. And this was basically the story which was used by the further Tandras for developing such type of mythological stories. In this, the main character is Vairochana, who is seated in deep meditation in Mount Sumeru, and he requests Vajrapani to summon all the Hindu deities. So, with the terror of Vajrapani, all the Hindu gods assemble before Vairochana and they accept his superiority. But Maheshwara and his consort Uma doesn't turn up. So, Vajrapani again has to force them to come in front of Shiva. But again, in front of Vairochana. But in front of Vairochana, Shiva insults Vajrapani by saying that I will not follow his instruction because he is a mere Yaksha, while I am a protector and I am a powerful deity. Hearing this, Vairochana gets angry, and he's more angry because he's not accepting the superiority of Vairochana. So he takes up the terrible form of Trilokya Vijaya, and then he attacks Shiva and his consort Uma and brings them under his feet. And but seeing this, Vairochana feels pity for Maheshwara, and then he requests Vajrapani to give him life. So listening to Vairochana, Trilokya Vijaya decides to revive Shiva as a Buddhist protected deity and gives him the name of Bhasmeshwara Nirkosha. So this thing it's mentioned that in Sarva Tathagata Tattva Samgraha, that Trilokya Vijaya is the deity responsible for the conversion of Maheshwara. And this is represented in this beautiful bronze from Achyut Rajpur. Here you can see that the deity Trilokya Vijaya is standing in Vajrahunkara Mudra, and he is trampling over the figures of Maheshwara and Uma. And to show the defeat, their weapons are shown scattered all over the pedestal. So this is an important find from Odisha, which shows that the people had knowledge of Sarva Tathagata Tattva Sangraha in Odisha during that time. This is the only image of Trilokya Vijaya that has been reported from Odisha so far. But we have many images from Bihar, like this one, which is now in National Museum, Delhi. So again, there is another tantra known as Sarva Durgati Parishodhana Tantra. In this also, Trilokya Vijaya is the important figure. And in this, the description of other Hindu gods are given on how they should be invocated in a mandala for acquiring powers by the practitioner. So here, Trilokya Vijaya is shown as a mandalesha, and all the other Hindu deities are shown surrounding him in his mandala. Another deity which we find in Orisen sculptures is Hayagriva. Hayagriva first appears in the sculptural art or in Buddhism as an attendant of various forms of Lokeshwara. So here he is shown as an attendant to Amoga Pasha, and here to Padmapani Lokeshwara and Avalokiteshwara. Here also it's form of Amoga Pasha, his attendant deity. But in the next stage of development, like Achala, he also gets an independent status. He gets a Vahana of his own, and he becomes a more ferocious deity. So from the sculptural remains or examples that we find from Orissa, his career stops here. We don't get sculptural evidence of the development of this deity from here. But in Buddhist tantras, later tantras, we see that Hayagriva develops into a more ferocious form of Avalokiteshwara. He started as an attendant of Avalokiteshwara, but now he's identified as a ferocious form of Avalokiteshwara and is known as Hayagriva. And the story here is that Hayagriva enters the body of Maheshwara and bursts him from inside. So along with the other attributes, he also wears a human skin as one of his attributes. So that is about the conversion by Hayagriva. The story is the same because they had to control Maheshwara as he was creating havoc with his retinue in the world. And this was the way adopted by Hayagriva to convert him. The next Buddhist deity is...
Dr. Sidhu, 5 minutes more.
Okay. So the next deity is Chakra Samvara. And this is from sculpture from Ratnagiri that we have in Patna Museum. And here he stands in Alida pose over the prostrate figures of Bhairava and Kalaratri. So according to Chakra Samvara Tantra, it is Samvara who uh, controls and conquers Shiva. And according to Hevajra Tantra, it is the deity Heruka or Hevajra who controls and subjugates Maheshwara. So we have examples of Heruka from this votive stupa in Ratnagiri, and we also have uh, sculptures, independent sculpture of Heruka from Ratnagiri itself, where he's shown standing over a corpse, and he has attributes of Khatwanga, Kapala, and Vajra in his hand. And when along with the concert, the deity is known as Hevajra. And in this form, the deity is shown uh, with having maras, like how we showed earlier. The Hindu gods representing maras are shown depicted at the feet. The next tantra, which deals with the subjugation of Maheshwara, is Vajra Bhairava Tantra. Now, here it's the ferocious form of Manjushri, Vajra Bhairava, who attacks and subdues Maheshwara. So, here we can see that it's a ferocious form of Manjushri with a buffalo head. And to show that it's an emanation of Manjushri, you have the figure of Manjushri on top of the head. And this particular figure has 16 pairs of feet. So here the story is that Maheshwara attacks along with in a group of 8 gods and 8 calamities and diseases. So in order to control all these, he has 16 feet so that he can subjugate the combined forces. From Odisha, we have the carrier of Amantaka as an attendant, as an independent deity, as a protected deity. But from here, Amantaka also developed into a ferocious form having a buffalo head, and also as Vajra Bhairava in Yabyum, as we see in the Western Himalayan monasteries. The next tantra which shows is the Kalachakra Tantra. Here, the deity Kalachakra is an emanation of Dhyani Buddha Akshobhya, and he subjugates Maheshwara, Kamadeva, Uma, and Rati. Maheshwara and Kamadeva are shown as getting trampled under the feet, while their consorts are shown holding the heels of Kalachakra as if to help their consorts. And this particular deity was redesigned at the time of foreign invasions. So now we can see that instead of subjugating the Hindu deities, they were all incorporated into the mandalas to give them more power. So it was an idea of the Buddhists to bring Hindus into their fold, to project Kalachakra as an ultimate deity who can protect them against the foreign invasions. So from these sculptures, we can see that various tantras, the Buddhists had knowledge of various tantras in Odisha, based on which these sculptures were made. And many of these tantras are now lost in Odisha. For example, this figures from Aragad that has created a lot of confusion. And recently, Dr. Tanaka has identified them based on a Tibetan translation of a Sanskrit text, Maya Jala Tantra, which is lost now in Orissa or anywhere in India. We don't have the Sanskrit version of that text. So based on those texts, those deities were identified as various forms of Dhyani Buddhas. So that shows that correct text has to be provided, and we should have the knowledge of the text to know which type of deity and what form of deity is depicted in that sculpture. And here we can see that there is an absence of images belonging to higher tantras from Orissa. And this can be attributed to the esoteric nature of the religion, because these deities are meditational deities. So a highest practitioner need not have a sculpture or a painting to visualize these deities, and because he has to meditate, and this this roop has to come from the shunyata. He has to find this expression from shunyata. He has to create it, and he has to become one with the deity. He has to identify himself as the deity he's meditating upon. And even if they had some sculptures or paintings, that would have been in their personal collection, and would have been miniature sculptures which the monks would have carried it with themselves when they move here and there. And from the sculptural study, we can see that Maheshwara, there's a question, why Maheshwara? So in Hinduism, we can see that Maheshwara is considered as an indestructible god in Buddhism, and in Hinduism, and for Buddhism, this is against their principle, because they advocate that nothing is permanent. So this is a way in which they try to show that even Maheshwara is not indestructible, and he is also personified as a form of personification of egoism and passion, which has to be crushed. So that is the reason why Maheshwara was selected for these subjugation purposes. But having said all this, there was a syncretic approach during the foreign attack period when the Buddhists had to coexist with the Hindus of that period. And that time, the Kalachakra deity was modified as a supreme deity, and all the Hindu gods were accommodated as protected deities into Buddhism. So, in this structure, my identification of Maheshwara as the most powerful deity in Buddhism. And by 18th century, we can see that Maheshwara is the supreme protector, is described as a supreme protector and the progenitor of all the dharma protectors. And now, when we look at the Tibetan tantras, we can see that he's no more a deity who is subjugated, but he is a supreme protector in their tantras. So these scriptures and sculptures and paintings show that how the status of deity Maheshwara changed from a Mara to that of supreme protector deity in Buddhism. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sindhu.
And thank you for.
It's a wonderful paper.
Thank
Actually,
you, sir.
your in-depth study enlightened us. Your all total comparative study and detailing the icons of Ratnagiri is wonderful. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for the entire team for inviting me for this lecture. Thank you, sir.
No, we don't have time. We'll discuss about this.
Yes, sir. I'll try.
Now I request Dr. Belendra Patra to present his paper. You know Belendra Patra, it's not an introduction. Please.
Esteemed President Sir of this session, dear delegate friends and student friends, I am very much thankful to Ravenna University, particularly Dr. Umakant Mishra, for inviting me to share my views with you. The title of my paper is Relocating the Maritime Heritage of early Odisha, an Archaeological Perspective. Indeed, I fear to express my views before an expert like Dr. Sunil Patnaik. He is an expert on this field. But in spite of this, with humility, I will place with you views. You know, Odisha has a rich maritime heritage. It is said that in ancient time, it was rich, prosperous, and powerful because of overseas trade and its contact with different parts of Southeast Asia. Traditionally, in literature, we have the reference, like in the Raghuvans, that king of Kalinga was known as Mahodadhipati. In the Sahitya Darpan, Vishwanath Kaviraj has described Kalinga Sahasika, the brave people of Kalinga. Similarly, Aryamanjushri Mulakalpa, a 7th, 8th century CE Mahayana Buddhist text, described the modern Bay of Bengal as Kaling Sagar. We have traditions like Kudurkuni Usa. We have traditions like Kartik Boit Bandhan. We have references in literature, in folklore, in folk traditions, and also we have the clue in some of the marine goddess temples located on the coast of sea, also on the bank of the rivers, like Narayani, Taratarini, Charchika, and many more to name. But it is very difficult to clearly picturize a complete picture of the maritime heritage of Odisha without the support of archaeology. But unfortunately, we can say roughly till 1990, though some papers were written, the papers were not proved that Odisha was a very powerful, very flourishing maritime power. But only after the establishment of Maritime Archaeology Institute at National Institute, Goa in the 1981 by ICHR, and particularly in Odisha in the 90s, interest developed in the field of the exploration and the research on the maritime history of Odisha. After that, many archaeologists, archaeological institutions, Archaeological Department of Government of Odisha, and under the leadership of Maritime Institute, Bhubaneswar, they are undertaking research to explore the maritime heritage of Odisha on the basis of archaeology. In my presentation, I have divided into 4 divisions. Number 1, archaeological remains, which have been explored and excavated by the scholars, archaeologists. Number 2, there are some epigraphical references. Also, coins or the numismatics, it also helped us. And finally, we have architectural and sculptural representations which portrayed or depicted, reflected the glorious maritime tradition of Odisha. So, maritime archaeology, I don't think to explain, but it does not connote merely the study of archaeological remains underwater. Rather, it includes scientific study of various aspects, such as identification of landing places, harbors, nature of woodwork, sea routes. In short, we can say that this is the scientific study of past seafaring from material remains of man and his activities on the sea. And this archaeological exploration, archaeological initiative, surfaced many ancient ports of Odisha. Tamaralithi, Cheritalo, which can be identified with Manikpatana, Kalkatapatana, Pallur, Pithun, Kalingpatnam. These are some of the reputed ports, very famous ports, which have been reflected from the archaeological excavation. But as I told, I'll throw some light on the archaeological remains, how helped us to reconstruct the maritime glory of Odisha. The excavations from Kuliana, Kuchei, Baidyapur, from where we have the evidence of the polished shoulder tools, rice and cord impressed pottery, which belongs to the Neolithic period. The same type of evidences have been also we get from Southeast Asia. So on the basis of this, some scholars argued that we had contact with Southeast Asia even from the time of the Neolithic period. But we cannot say exactly because these interaction might be there through the land route also. We have also have the evidence of the bar cells from Shankarajanga, which are considered the earliest musical instruments of Odisha. Similar artifacts we have also discovered from Vietnam. So on the basis of this, some scholars also argued that we had contact with Vietnam. But these are assumptions. Some archaeological excavations proved tangibly, very substantially, that how Odisha had contact with different parts of Southeast Asia like Java, Sumatra, Bali, Borneo, Burma, Thailand, China, Sri Lanka, and even with the Roman Empire. We have some evidences discovered from the excavation at Golbai. For example, discovery of the bone implements, harpoons, and polished stone eggs significantly indicate that there was a fishing culture and some people were living also on the profession of boat building. Next is Palur. Our esteemed superintendent, chairperson of this session, is exploring, presently excavating that site. But as a course of narration, I will toss that. Palur, Ptolemy during the 2nd century CE has described it was the only port on the east coast of India which had overseas contact with Southeast Asia. For the first time, he referred to a sea route across the ocean. He referred to sea route across the ocean, not the coastal route. This is very significant. And it has been identified with Palur in the Chhatrapur subdivision of Ganjam district. And from this area, we have the evidences like the fragments of Chinese celadon ware, Roman related pottery, amphora pieces, and also Bateshwara and Onleswara temples are there in the midst of the sand dunes. And the hill nearby Palur village, there is a watermark on the hill. Besides this, some artifacts, some discoveries are there, just like the pillar discovered on the top of the hill. And also, you see, this is Bateshwar temple, watermark on the stone of the Palur hill. Then there is the evidence of a stup, recently explored by Dr. Sunil Patnaik sir, that it could be a stup. And excavation is going on. And in future, many things will come out which substantially proved that how Palur was far ahead of other ports situated on the coast of or east coast or on the Coromandel coast. One thing I appeal, we should strive to establish the glory. Ma pila jetebele kandeni, ma bhi dudh pilata nahi. We should strive. We should attempt to prove the maritime glory, maritime heritage of Odisha on the proper footing in the correct perspective. Otherwise, so far we are sandwiched. Kalinga's coast or the coast of Kalinga has not been portrayed properly in the pages of history. Then we have discovered Ravleti Dwari, where Patiri, from Manikpatna, from Bamanghati, from Tamralipti, which proved that we had contact with the Roman Empire. If it was not directly, it was through indirect process, because Arika Medu, so far is considered as the hub of the Roman trade. Then we have also discovered many things from other places, and we have discovered many things from Lalitgiri, Udayagiri, Ratnagiri, and Langudi, particularly the excavations from Manikpatna on the northern tip of the Chilka Lake. We have discovered, or we obtained, Roman Ravleted ware, Chinese laden ware, Silonese coin, Siamese pottery, Arabian pottery, which proved that Manikpatna was an international port up to the early medieval period. It had contact with Indonesia, Java, Sumatra, Bali, Borneo, Sri Lanka, Siam, that's Thailand, Burma, that's Myanmar, also with the Roman Empire. Similarly, we have discovered Chinese coin, Chinese leadenware, etc. from Calcutta Patna on the bank of river Kushabhadra, very near to Konark. It proved that how Calcutta Patna during the early medieval period played a significant role in the maritime history of Odisha. And you know, I told you the excavation from Lalitgiri, Ratnagiri, Udagiri, and Langudi Bihar, which was excavated, explored by Dr. Patnaik sir. It also proved, helped us tremendously for the establishment of the maritime heritage of Odisha. We have discovered from Lalitgiri relic casket, this is figure of relic casket, how they systematically kept the relic, that is 4-in-1. This is not a practiced in Odisha, but it was very common in Saila. So on the basis of this, we can say that might be there was a close contact through Buddhism, overseas contact with China. Then from the Ratnagiri Mahabihar, we have discovered Mahavaya Tara, which Madam was presenting. Here we have a figure of that figure, that is the scene of Jaranavabhaya, shipwreck scene. Means sea trade was not free from dangers. It was full of hazardous journey. It was full of perils. If you go through the account given by Payar, you see there was leakage in the boat or the ship. There was a shortage of water. There was no proper food. So sea journey was not an easy task. People were following the coastal route. In a limited time, or only in the centuries AD, they were following the sea route or route across the ocean. So this is the evidence of shipwreck, danger, and out of danger, or to be protected free from the danger, the sailors, they were praying Ashtamabhata. Then we say recent excavation from Calcutta Patna, from Manikpatna, I have described. On the left, there is a Laden ware. In the middle, there is the Chinese coin. and in the right side there is a Shiloniji coin. Then outside Odisha, some of the remains also proved how we had contact with them. And from Dantapet in Thailand, precious stones, glass beads, knobware, bronze vessels, which have been excavated, this also tangibly refer to the contact between Thailand and Odisha. So in brief, this is about the archaeological remains. Similarly, inscriptions also helped a lot. For example, though there is no reference to the naval expedition, in the Hathigumpa inscription of Kharavela, Kharavel led many expeditions in the alternative year, either in north or in south. He defeated the South Indian kings. It is also on the basis of this we can say that Kharavel might have a very strong naval force. Research should be undertaken to find out what type of naval force was there, how Kharavel was utilizing that. Then also from the inscription of Ashoka, located at Jaugarh and and Dhauli, we can also say, because Jaugarh is located on the bank of river Rushikulya, a trading point. So Ashoka located his inscription the trading points. On the basis of this, we can also guess. And one inscription of the Bhaumakara period, Kumarang plate issued by Dandi Mahadevi, for the first time described by Pandit Vinayak Mishra in his book, that there is a mention about Samudra Karabandh, 3 tax which was collected. So many others are there, but some inscriptions of Southeast Asian countries of Java, they also refers to the Kalinga and the things belongs to Kalinga. Tugu rock inscription of Punarbarmanam of 4th century C found in western Java refers to the digging of a canal. Named Chandrabhaga, B.S.C.H. Sabra, in his book Expansion of Aryan Culture, has described this could be named after Chenab River. But when there is a river named Chandrabhaga flowing in Odisha, why it would not be after the name of Chandrabhaga River? So might be this canal was named after Chandrabhaga River. Then the cookie copper plate of also Java mentions that the potters and all sorts of the servants, they came from Kling, that is Kalinga. And this is about the inscriptional references. Then the discovery of the coins, punch-marked coins, Kushan coins issued by Satavahanullah, coins found from Chandraketugad excavation, and imitated Kushan coins circulated in different parts of Odisha. They generally refers to the maritime trade on the east coast, and in particular the coast of Kalinga, or that is Odisha. This is one Satavahan coin issued by Vasishtiputra Kulumavi, and it reflects the 2-masted boat. Then maritime pride of ancient Odisha also inspired, instigated, tempted the sculptors, the painters, the artists to depict the figure of boat sculptures in the sculptural specimens. For example, the earliest specimen we found from a sculptural frieze. Now it is preserved in the Odisha State Museum, which was collected nearby area of Brahmeshwara temple. It portrayed 2 boats. These are boats In some places, people have written ships, not boats. So you see this figure, how it portrayed the carrying of a the elephant. Odisha was very famous for the production of elephant. Puensa vividly described that Congo area was very famous because also Periplus of the Iraqian Sea mentions that Dosarini, it could be a place on the southern tip of Chilka Lake, it was very famous for the production of elephants, known as Bosare. And they were exporting